Welcome, hello everyone to another week of BC Sandpile. I'm Mike Salander and I have Dave Haglad with me here, and we're really excited to talk about today's topic, which is how to best use the WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get editor, inside of Business Catalyst. There's a new one, there's an old one. We're gonna talk a little bit about the differences, but before we get into that, I'm gonna start off with some industry news. First of all, if you are interested in what happened at Adobe Max and want to hear a rundown, check out last week's video where Dave and I go back and forth and tell you the things we like and didn't like about it. But overall, it was a really great conference, and we're excited to have been a part of it this year. Let's see, on the BC App Store side of things, we have a new app from CBO. I think I've mentioned this before as an upcoming app. I'm really excited that it is now live. It's a search engine optimization app. Of course, it's not going to just magically make your sites search engine optimized and rank on top of Google, but it's going to give you the reporting and the tools needed to help you to do that yourself. And one of the really great things about this is that it integrates directly with Google Analytics and pulls in some nice to read reports that you can take action on, because I know a lot of times it's hard to demystify kind of what analytics you should pay attention to when you go into Google Analytics. So really excited about that one. Also, at the BC Academy, Chad has updated his web form submission via Ajax tutorial and has now included a second part of that video series. And now he extends into the topic of how to submit paid web forms, where you're accepting credit cards, submission via Ajax. So check that out if you guys are interested. And then with BC Gurus, I know Dave's working hard on a new upcoming e-commerce template. And Dave, I don't know if you've got any spoilers for the audience here on what to expect with that template.
I do. Anyone see a lock of hair? That's because it gets pulled out. No spoilers. We're trying to add some pretty good functionality there. A little bit of a review thing, a quick view, which seems to be working pretty darn good. Yeah, we're just trying to really stuff as much as we can in there, within reason, of course, with budget and time. But we're trying to make this just a really rock solid e-commerce template.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. It's great to have an out-of-the-box kind of e-commerce experience that you can use for clients, big and small. All right, enough of that. Let's get on to the topic for today. Dave, I don't know if you want to go ahead and start sharing your screen, because this is going to be a visual topic today. Of course, if you're just listening, that is fine as well. But first, Dave, why don't you get us kind of an overview of the two different WYSIWYG editors inside of Business Catalyst, and what are the strengths and weaknesses between the two, in your opinion?
Well, the old one provided a bit more flexibility, particularly with images, but it had some things in there that just didn't work. You couldn't apply CSS styles. It was not easy to do even just headings and paragraph tags and that kind of thing. But the biggest one was probably it was adding div tags when people wanted to add paragraph tags. It was just tough to work with, and people really wanted to be able to apply CSS through the editor rather than having to get into the HTML. And it just did not, unless you set it up exactly right, stood on your left foot with your finger in your right ear and touched your chin, you weren't able to successfully get those CSS styles to show up.
Got it.
The new one is better. It's got a couple of challenges, but overall, it's a much better experience. It's not perfect, but it is way better. And I frankly haven't looked at it in detail for a while. So in preparation for today, I went and poked around a bit, and I was pleasantly surprised at some of the things that we're able to do now.
Great. So let's get into that, Dave. What's one of those things about the new editor that you'd like to show people today? And just for everyone's benefit, if you're new to Business Catalyst or you've been around for a while, these things that Dave and I are going to be talking about today, these aren't brand new features that are just coming out to Business Catalyst, but it is a topic that was one of the most requested topics on BC Sandpile. So we figured it'd be a great topic to go over, even if some of this is a review for people, or perhaps you didn't know that the editor can do these things. So I think whether you're new to Business Catalyst or been around a while, there's probably something here for you.
You bet. Now, I have lost my chat window when I shared my screen, so I do have the Q&A open. If you have a question, pop it in the Q&A, and I'll see it there. And Mike, if you see something in the chat window, just stop me.
Absolutely.
So I just grabbed the latest audio podcast template from BC Gurus just as a starting place, and the way you turn it on. It's under Site Settings, Beta Features. And of course, it wouldn't be a day in Business Catalyst world if I didn't get logged out. So still down in Beta Features and...
Oh, logged out again.
Yeah, 2 for 2. Let's try a third time. Oh, man. How do you like me so far? All right, one more time. Oh.
All right.
So the first thing you need to do is come to the new admin editor for any given site and enable it here. And that's what turns it on for all your pages, for your, it doesn't turn it on for e-commerce. You have to do that in your partner portal, but it turns it on for all your pages, for your web apps and those kinds of things. So you start with that. And then when you get to your page, just grab an about page. Then your editor looks like this. It's got a single bar, not 2 bars. It's a much more simplified. You have normal text, which is a paragraph, heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bold, italics. You have a little bit of list, a little bit of alignment, left and right, adding images, adding a video, adding a table, adding a link, changing font colors, changing font backgrounds, changing the actual font that's applied, changing the size. And this is CSS. You can see I was playing around, and I'll show you where I did that. And even toggling table borders and toggle maximize. Oh, look at that. I didn't know you could do that, Mike.
Oh, yeah. Oh, nice.
So that's kind of cool. So what I like about this is I can change this toolbar. So I'm logged into my partner portal, and you go to Online Editor Settings, and then you choose the site you want to work with. And so site by site, you can change what your end client can see or even what you can see. So from a redactor buttons perspective, you can turn on or off formatting, bold, italic. You can see all the ones there. So let's just say I didn't want insert table on, I never want my clients to insert a table. So if I just uncheck that, hum the Jeopardy tune. Do, 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 do.
Well, Dave, this is great. I often forget that you can go to the partner portal and change the online editor settings. So this is a really great reminder.
Yeah, and again, it's site specific. So just because I turn the tables off for one site doesn't mean I have to turn it off for all sites. So I don't know if it's actually doing. Maybe it actually did it and it just left the wheel there because of the zoom. So now when I refresh this, it didn't save it, obviously. There's my table button. I'm just going to go here again.
Okay, so we're going into the back end in the online editor settings and trying to disable the table for the WYSIWYG editor for one of our sites here that we're working on.
Table. Okay. Save.
There we go. All right, there we go.
All right. So now this is the table button right here. So when I refresh now, oh man.
There we go. It's gone. I saw it briefly.
Yeah.
Before we got logged out again.
I don't know. It hasn't happened all afternoon. And of course, boom. So site manager pages, about page. All right, so that table button is now gone. So I can control that button by button, whether a client sees that or not. You don't want them uploading images or inserting videos. Remove that button via this list here. So if I didn't want them to be able to insert videos, I would just do that and save it. Now there is some adjustment you can do in the editor content. I didn't do much with this, but it really this affects what this looks like. And I don't like playing with that too much because things get broken. So you can see this is redactor specific, background color yellow, background color some other odd color. So I really just left that alone, but I didn't want to just gloss over it. I don't know what to do with it, therefore I didn't do anything with it. Now this editor CSS, you can see I've added a couple of test classes. And when I come here into this CSS, you can see those classes here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so if you have classes that your client always uses, let's just say image right.
Oh, that's a great example.
And you can, in your CSS, of course, you can, I don't know what's going on.
I think you still got that spinning bar there, so maybe let's refresh that page and try it again. But yeah, this is a great example because we often get people, let's say, especially using blog posts where we've got a nice style, a nice class associated with an image that maybe puts some border on it, some padding around it, aligns it left, right, or centered or something like that. But you can't really do that well within the WYSIWYG. So being able to select an image and then apply a predefined class, which they could reference in, let's say, like a style guide, for instance, is really useful and it empowers the user to do a lot more.
Exactly. So you see that's got image right there now. I'm going to refresh and Lord knows what will happen. Yeah.
So Dave, I would recommend something. I would log in using the businesscatalyst.com URL. Now the World Secure System should work fine, but I've noticed my login issues when I just log in through the Business Catalyst version of the domain to be better. So I can't say that as a definitive to everyone in the world. That's what you should be doing, but in my personal experience, I've noticed it's been better.
Okay. Use the incognito does a better job as well. Oh.
I think you're using, yeah, there you go.
I use my other account just because it's easier. I have an account with BC Guru, so I was able to easily get the template. All right, let's see if we can maintain here. So there's my image right. There's that class. If I just select the image right, that class would be applied to that. Now I did play a little bit with this stuff. If I just highlight that and say test, it actually adds a span here.
Nice.
Now, if I highlight the whole thing and say test, you can see here that it adds the class right to the tag. So if you,
great.
Yeah, if you use a partial, it adds a span with that class. But if you select the whole tag, it puts it where it should, which is right on the tag. And I don't believe the old editor did that before.
Well, this is really useful, and that's a smart way to apply it. That's kind of how we'd approach it if we were manually coding the site and adding the class there. So I know I feel like I'm overly excited about this, but this is actually really important for one of our existing clients right now, who is a publisher, and they put together a lot of both print magazine articles and online magazine articles, and they just have more needs of using the WYSIWYG editor to put styles together. Like maybe they want to do a pull quote to the right or pull quote to the left or top or bottom, or and so I don't want to have to teach them HTML. So this is great. I'm glad we looked into it because I didn't even really know what to do in that case.
You bet. And you can laser focus this down to the 8 or 10 classes that they're likely to use. They don't have to know the 1,000 that are in the style sheet, just the ones that they need for the jobs that they're trying to do.
Oh, and Dave, before we move on to the next piece, we do have a question here live from Steven, who asks, if you apply a CSS class on a site, then duplicate the site, will it remain on the new site? I actually don't know the answer to that question definitively, but just intuitively, based on how it works, I would imagine that it would not work on the replicated site, and you would need to go into the partner portal and apply the classes just like Dave did for this here. But I actually don't. I'd have to go test that to see.
I agree, and if we have time, I can go replicate this site and then come back in here and just see what happens. But I suspect you're right that it's because it's site by site. I don't think it's going to follow the site, but we can check that once I'm through here. So font works in much the same way. You can see I've added test font, and if I come to the site here and go to fonts, there's my test font right at the bottom.
And Dave, what does that actually mean? Like, how can I just put in test font and then magically a test font will appear?
Yeah.
I don't understand what that means.
Well, let's just see what we get here. So if I say test font and then go look at the team, you can see that it applies a style font family test font.
Okay.
So
could I use this in conjunction with web fonts? Like if I have a Google font or Typekit or something like that, could I put in the actual fonts the custom fonts that I'm using throughout the website, or is this more just for system fonts?
No, this as long as you've got the font loaded on that site, you can use it this way. I personally wouldn't do that. I would go back here and I would say my fancy font, and I would add that class. And then if they wanted to apply that, they would go here and say my fancy font. Rather than doing an inline style, if I apply it with a CSS class, I think that's a much cleaner way to do it.
Okay, and Dave, I think you're right on that, but just I don't know, for someone out there who's not super familiar with this, like why is it better to define a class to this rather than to do inline style, kind of like font overrides?
The biggest issue is specificity. So when you apply an inline style, it doesn't matter what you do. Now, if I go in my CSS and I try and apply a different font family to the label class, it will never take. This inline style is so powerful, it will always take precedence over any CSS styling.
Got it.
Yeah, so inline styling, I would avoid.
And then Dave, if I know this test font is not a real font,
yeah,
and therefore I'm not going to see the changes. But if this was actually a real font and I changed the font here in the WYSIWYG editor, would I actually see that change take effect here, or would I have to preview the page in order to see that new font?
Well, you can see here, I just changed that to Courier New, the team, and it changed. There's Arial.
And so those are for the system defined fonts, but you're saying that the same thing would carry through for any fonts that we define as well, as long as it's defined in the CSS.
I see what you're asking now. Yeah. If we have time, do we have time?
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I know to some this probably seems like a really basic concept, but I think fonts are such an important part of sites, and if a lot of times if the client can't see it right away and they have to click preview, it might confuse them and they might start applying all these fonts to different places without realizing it. So I think this is a good test just to make sure and see that the client will actually see the custom font that we throw in there in the WYSIWYG editor. Are we just using Arial on this whole site? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I know better than that, but I think I'm wondering if just because of the way I replicated it, I'm not getting it out. Yeah.
What do we use it on these templates for fonts? Is it a Google font? Is it a Typekit? What are we doing?
Generally speaking, I use a Google font just because it's
Okay.
much easier to change and you don't have to have a Typekit account. So it's yeah. So there's an example, this Josephine.
Okay, got it. So we're applying this new font, Josephine Sands, in the partner portal, and then going to see if we can see what that font looks like on the front end when we update the text here.
Exactly. And I don't know if it works or not. Nah, you were right.
But now let's preview the page and see if it takes effect there. as
Now,
the team?
yeah, now I'm wondering the font family, Josephine. So it is there.
What if you disable it though? Disable that element.
Yeah,
Okay, so it is actually adjusting,
yeah.
although it does look strikingly similar to what it currently is.
Well, it's a sans serif font. I mean, it's Carla is the other one here,
Oh, okay.
which is quite similar.
Okay, so if we go back to the WYSIWYG editor,
Hmm.
there's no real clear indication. Let's try changing Meet the Brains behind the podcast. That's just a serif font to a sans serif. Let's see if that's a difference that we can notice. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind, guys, is that when you are applying this font family change, it's not actually seeing it within the WYSIWYG editor. You have to preview the page in order to see it rendering. Now, Dave, can we do something similar, but do it via the class and see if the class actually updates the rendering of the font within the WYSIWYG editor?
Um, I would say it does not, and I'm basing that on the fact that this already should, that's the team here, and even this text here is already sans serif, and you can see that it's not.
What's not? I'm sorry. We didn't apply a class to it. We just applied a font.
Right, but this text has a class applied to it
Oh, I get what you're saying. Okay.
already, and it's showing up as serif in the editor here.
Oh, well, okay, so that's kind of a little frustrating. So I can't get a very clear picture just using the editor how my content is going to render. Is there anything we can do about that? I thought maybe we can put like the CSS files before the reference to the body of the page. Where are our CSS files in relation to the call of of the template? Is it in the head? Is it in the footer?
Do you mean in admin or on the actual page?
Well, like if you view source of the about page, where are we outputting the CSS file?
In the head.
In the head, okay. So I can't recall what it is, but I thought there was a trick where I could be wrong. This could be the old editor, but if we actually took, and maybe I'd like to do this as a test, a live test with you guys, if you don't mind, is if we just take the snippet of code out of the CSS file that applies to a particular class or the definition of the font and just put it in the head and not actually and separate it from the file. I think that the editor picks up those styles, but I'm not certain. But I think it's worth testing if we could just do a really quick test and just put some raw CSS in that head file.
You mean like a style tag?
Yeah, like any definition of a class. So like a definition of one of those items that we're using in the body of the page.
Sorry, Mike, I'm not really following what you want me to do.
So go back to the about page.
Mm-hmm.
And what class is Meet the Brains behind the podcast using? Or look at any of these classes. Let's say feature title. What happens if we take the definition of feature title from the CSS file and just put it into the head of the document instead? Oh, okay. So James actually mentioned, he says, as long as you reference the CSS file in the actual page rather than an include, it will work. So let's go ahead and can we try doing that just so we can verify that and see? Because I think that can be really important for people if they've got a client who's really going to be using this WYSIWYG editor and wants those styles to bleed through. It might be worthwhile putting that stuff into maybe a content holder or perhaps just directly into the head instead. So Dave, let's give that a whirl.
Well, again, I'm feeling kind of stupid because I don't really know what you want me to do here. Do you want me to take this? Is that what you're
No,
after?
so just forget everything that's on your screen. Just go to the include file that has the call of all the head, the underscore head include file. Now take the reference to the CSS, style CSS, and either copy or cut this out. We can probably just copy.
Okay.
And then now go to the template that is the About page is using. And then paste it into the head. And hit publish. And see if that works. So I think it's that Business Catalyst can't go through the include file to pick up the styles of the style sheet. Now, I'm not advocating that you put two CSS files that reference the same CSS file twice in your website. So this is just a test to see if this works.
And
there you go.
Oh, I see. Huh.
Very nice. So this is actually really important information, and perhaps something that can we put it into a content holder, Dave? Let's create a new content holder and put this style sheet into the content holder and reference that and see if it works. Because if that works, that's great, because then content holders and includes are very similar, and we might be able to do that. Cool. While you're doing that, Dave, Mike said for reference, the BC editor is based on this Telerik example. So I think that's I don't know if that's correct. I thought that's the old editor. I think the new editor for Business Catalyst is based on Redactor, I believe. So yeah.
Okay, so that does not seem to have worked.
That does not work. Okay, so we need the reference. We need the.
So I have it there.
We need the actual CSS file to be referenced in the template if you want those styles to bleed through. And you may or may not want those styles to bleed through, honestly, because if you go back to the About page with it in there, Dave, and go to edit it, it's a little bit harder to edit it probably like this. Or I don't know. I mean, is it more prone to breaking, or does it feel? I mean, it feels more like I'm editing the actual page, which I really like. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Can I think of a downside of editing it this way?
I can't think of one. But then I haven't really.
Can you change? Okay. So I'm thinking, if we change the class of an item here using that class dropdown, I wonder if you can see the effect in here, because that'd be nice, because then if I actually say image right, it can move the image actually to the right, and I can see the text position to the left, and all that seems like a pretty nice editing experience.
Okay, it's a challenge with the way this is set up because it uses Foundation Builder.
Oh, okay.
I would have to actually load a valid copy of Foundation Builder.
Don't worry about that. I think we've gone deep enough into this topic for people to understand the implications here. So some might like that the editor, the WYSIWYG editor, just kind of has your no styles, just your basic kind of formatting and markup of the content and what it should be, and then have to preview the page to see it. So that might be a plus, or some people might like that you can view here when you're editing it kind of more exactly what the page is going to render as.
Yeah, and realistically, it just means adding that line there, although, let me think about that. Yeah, as long as that's your last line there, it would load after your jQuery in this case. But as long as your fonts are loaded ahead of that, you should be all right. Yeah, that's interesting. I did not know. So fonts, same thing with font size. I added 22 M's on the bottom there. And you can see there's my 22 M's on the bottom. So if you have a custom size, or if you want to, you choose to use M's. I don't know how you get rid of these though. I don't know if you can just
can't delete those out. Okay.
Yeah, they're just there. And mine shows up at the bottom, so it's not exactly intuitive.
And can you select 22 M's? What happens? Do we actually see it visualized here?
I'm sure it's just going to apply an inline style. But,
There we go. So that actually did update.
but it's just doing an inline style, right?
Right.
So I think that would be last ditch. Like I wouldn't recommend doing that on a regular basis, but if it's one little thing, okay.
Got it. And it also looks like, Dave, you got to be kind of careful with the new ones that you add, because go back to the partner portal for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even delete the ones you just added.
You can't.
Can you? Oh, there is a button there.
Actually,
you can remove right there. Right.
See. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. So 36.
Oh, there we go. You can remove them. That's nice.
So now
I just completely bypassed that remove button in my mind.
Yeah, me too. 36 is gone there. Yeah. So
yeah.
I thought it was a save button or something.
Yeah. So we didn't even look at it. Nice.
So you could. I don't know if you can do you can't do multiples. You got to do one at a time, but that's okay. So again, you could laser focus this down to what you want your client to be able to do. Although again, I think you'd be far better off setting up a class that they apply than doing an inline style like that. Color is much the same. So you can add a custom color. I added one earlier. It's a red. So let's just say I want that. And again, it's going to apply it in line, but that's my red there. It shows up as a nice color swatch.
Okay, nice.
Now that, I wonder if I take this back out again.
Man, now I see this old way again. I really want to go back to the styled way. I like that better.
Now, interestingly enough, that does show.
That makes sense because that's inline and not based off of any CSS definition.
So True enough. Yeah, I didn't know that could do that. So I'm really thinking now if I can find a way to make that work for a template. Cool. And then other settings under other. This default upload folder path, I could not get to do what I wanted it to do. You can see it's not defaulting to anything there. I tried a few different variations and I could not get that to default to what I said to default it to.
I think that might be one of those things that only works with the older editor and is a known issue, but I am not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, I just wonder if anybody who's listening has had some success with that. And while we're waiting for that, I'll also say create a break when customers hit enter instead of a P. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but okay. And this email campaigns was another one. It says new visual editor, enable for email campaigns. But when I go to email campaigns here, it's already there. So I think you're right. That might be old as well.
No, you do need that for the email campaigns. So go to your content.
Does that not look like a new one to you?
No, that's the new visual editor actually lets you toggle between visual, rich, and HTML. This is just the new editor. So go and switch that on and you'll see the difference.
Now I know.
It allows for the in-context editing of the email marketing templates.
Yeah, I do use that all the time. I just looked at the bar here and said, well, that looks pretty much the same.
I think you have to come back out and come back in, or you might even have to log out and log back in.
There we go.
There you go. See, now you've got the rich. So the rich editor is the same thing. If you go over to the left and hit visual editor, this is going to be, well, we don't have any regions defined. And then you can switch over to the HTML editor. So when you turn on the new editor, it actually does apply to the email campaign as well. So it replaces the old WYSIWYG editor for that. But what the partner portal thing for the editor is referring to the visual editing experience, which is the ICE editor, the in-context editing.
Yeah, I was just looking at these buttons going, they look the same. I forgot all about that. And I use this all the time, actually. So once I changed the page template, then my editable region showed up here. like they're supposed to.
Yep.
So now if I went back to the other one, I bet you it's there. Yeah. Cool. All right, so that does work. So the only thing I couldn't get to work then is this default upload folder path.
Well, I think that's something that we're just going to have to leave as an open issue for now. I'm not sure that that works with the new editor.
Agreed. Yeah, I was hoping someone out there might have had a different experience. So that's what I know about the WYSIWYG editor. It's much better than it was. The only thing I miss was I used to be able to select an image, and now I can do the edit here. But you can't do. You used to be able to cheat and do padding. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
So I used to be able to say 20 pixels top, bottom, left to right, and center or left and right align. And with this editor, you can't do that.
Dave, you're missing one of my favorite features about this new editor, though, and that is the video thing. So go over to YouTube. I know you've got a lot of videos about guitars that you've been watching lately. Just grab your favorite one.
Here, I'll fool you. I've got my Sandpile videos up here.
Okay, great. So let's take the Sandpile video, the max recap. Let's click on it, and let's pretend that the idea of embed codes just scares us.
Okay.
We don't like it. Just grab the URL. Just copy the URL.
The whole thing, or just the code?
Just the whole URL. Just copy it.
Okay, got it.
And go back to the website. Now find a nice place you'd like to insert your video.
Okay.
Now click that video button and just paste in the URL and hit insert. Boom. I show clients love it. They're like, hey, can I put videos on my new website? I'd be like, sure. In the past I've been like, oh, let's create a web app for that. And you can create web apps and it has other advantages to it. But with this, it's just really easy, really simple just to drop in a new video. And so you're looking at the responsiveness of it, Dave, and you're seeing that it doesn't respond down, which is part of the challenge. But if you code the container correctly for that page body, I have seen it actually respond down correctly.
Oh yeah, I mean you can definitely do it, but you'd have to. I wonder if
you can do it without even applying classes. I've done it on a site where the overall container just kind of size it down correctly.
So if it's responsive embed is what you need to do. So if after you insert your video, if you select the whole thing and said responsive embed.
Yeah, that could be another thing as well. Yeah.
Like that, I think that might just do it. Let's just try. I'll try test 2 and see what I get there. You might have to be a little careful, but yeah, I didn't make it. So somehow you'd have to get.
Did it put it on the iframe? You got to look. Scroll over to the right.
Yeah,
put it on the iframe.
Yeah, so you'd have to make sure you had the whole thing selected. Maybe. Yeah, not quite. So it might take a little bit of fussing, but
And so the cool thing is you go back to that, David. I think it also works with Vimeo. If you grab the embed code, it works. And so this video item here, this is something that I tell the clients is not just a video. If there's any sort of embed code that they want to place that they get from another tool, for example, maybe it's JW Player, or it could be what do you call it, like Spotify or SoundCloud or whatever. You just pop in any embed code there, and it's gonna place it into the code behind the scenes where it needs to go. And you might be like, well, that's kind of silly. Like, I don't need that. Of course, we don't need that. We're developers, and code doesn't scare us. But just going into the back end in the HTML view to insert a snippet of embed code might scare someone. So this allows you to put any sort of embed code you want into the frame.
So that did work, although it threw an extra p tag in there. But
oh, Dave, this editor always throws an extra p tag in.
So I mean that wasn't too bad. I just if you train your customer just to copy and paste that, div class equals responsive embed, then paste their link, that's not too bad. It's trainable.
Well, like I said, I don't know the CSS as well as you do, Dave, but I have implemented it on a website where I just took the actual YouTube link and put it in there, and it automatically responded down. So there must have been something with the container of the body that had it respond automatically. But I don't think you need to always put that responsive embed around it.
Okay.
Yeah, the extra P tags are really frustrating. And what's frustrating sometimes is that you will have your editor and you got rid of the extra spaces, and then you go to save, and then magically some more appear in like different areas. So unfortunately, we have to tell our clients to say, like after you save it, just do a double check of all the formatting and the spacing, and just get rid of any extra spaces that you see.
We like to say it's not just a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah, it's a feature that requires you to double check your work, so it's really a benefit.
So I just randomly threw that on the overarching container.
Yeah.
And as long as it was there, it was largely okay. It's not perfect, but it's way easier to insert that with just a little bit of education, I think, and you could probably find a way around it too, actually.
Sure. But you're also putting it into a container that's a little odd with this picture trying to crowded space on the right and stuff too. So it might look a little bit better in kind of a normal part of the page.
Mm. Well, it looks like we both learned something. Maybe other folks did too. It's interesting what you can do, and it's all around how you use it. I mean, you had a need where you had to drop some videos in. I've never bothered with that, so I never looked at it. It's interesting. Still not perfect, but I think it's way better than it was.
Yeah, I mean, on the podcast theme here, I set up my wife Amanda from She Did It Her Way just did a in-person summit, and she recorded the videos and sold access to these videos to people, and we set up a Business Catalyst landing page and collected the payment and all that kind of stuff. And to set up the secure zone with access to these videos, I just did a quick and dirty way where you just upload it to YouTube, leave it as unlisted, and then I just went into the page editor and I put headline, dropped in the YouTube URL, like headline, YouTube URL link. And so within like 15 minutes, I had a secure page that had all of this video content, which I could set up with a web app, and I could have done it in a more complicated and probably ultimately better way, but just the ease of use of just going in and doing that was fantastic.
For sure, yeah. No, never mind. I was gonna say visual content finder, and if it's set up right, you could just anyway. Blah blah blah.
Well, what would you? No, expand on that, Dave. What do you mean?
Again, if the page is set up properly, your end user, if they have visual content finder loaded, can click a link, get to the back page where they need to be, and add whatever they need to add, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think the visual content finder is a great way to get to the part of the page that you need to, a part of the back end. But of course, the visual content finder isn't rewriting the interface and how to edit it. So yeah, it's still important to know how to use the WYSIWYG editor, because ultimately that's where you'll end up, unless it's a specific, just a regular field for a custom web app.
Yeah, I mean, you still wind up someplace where you need to use the WYSIWYG editor.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So you'd wind up there for instance, with Mr. Franklin Stein. That's Kristen's humor. Franklin Stein.
I don't get it.
Jacqueline Hyde. Loophole. Page 2. Come on, you don't get those?
Well, I get Franklin Stein. I got it. No.
Walter Mellon.
Took me a while.
Souffle. Come on. I think she was.
Those are good because they weren't super obvious to me.
So that's what I discovered about the editor. It's a better experience. It's not perfect, but it's much better. And I find with the folks that I have entering their own content, I usually just record it. Like they want to do blog posts, I record a little video, shows them how to do it, and as long as they follow that, then they generally speaking don't have any problems.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to hear from the live audience if there's any other questions I had about using the WYSIWYG editor. Like I said, this was one of the most requested topics on the BC Sandpile page. So it's something that we wanted to make sure that we covered, but quite honestly, we weren't 100% sure what are the things that you guys wanted to learn. So I think we covered on a lot of the points today, but I want to see if there's anything else that you guys have questions on, or any tips and tricks that you want to share with the community that we can all benefit from.
I like what Daniel suggested there. That's an idea too, is set up a specific template for editing. The only downside is you'd have to remember what template you changed it from. So when I go to edit the page, I could use the editing template and it would have the CSS tag in the head so that you could see it visually, but you'd have to remember to switch it back to the other one. That's the only downside.
Well, I think I was just thinking about something. I don't know why you would do this, but you theoretically could. And that is, you could use Liquid to detect if the person viewing the website is an admin user, is logged into the back end. And if so, I'll put the CSS file in the template. If not, load the include file. But I don't know if that would work in terms of carrying the styles through, because it would technically be inside of a Liquid statement, and I don't know if it'd run that Liquid statement before the rendering of it. So that may not work, but it's, hey, go and experiment with it if it's something that's of interest.
Yeah, well, maybe that's kind of cool, actually. Interesting. All right, it's up to Daniel then. Come up with something intelligent, Daniel. Give us a place to go.
So Steve asked a question, does anyone have a standard setup for the editor when they launch a site? I get the impression most like me, just groan when they show/train a client and say get in touch. So we actually don't have a process to go and update these settings in the back end of the website or the partner portal when we launch a new website. But actually, this whole topic has got me thinking about having a standard operating procedure as we go live with the website, or before we go live, before we train the client. We're putting together these style guides, and we're defining our different fonts available, and we're defining our different sizes that are being used in various places. Like, why not go in there and make sure that those are the only options? Like, why give the client the ability to screw something up and disobey the style guide if we can control it, and similarly put in any of the classes that relate in the style guide to the formatting of content inside the body of a page. It seems like a no-brainer to go in there and update. So Dave, what do you think? I mean, this seems like, and I know it adds a little extra time, but it seems like something we might want to consider to be part of our regular build process.
I mean, generally speaking, in the CSS and the style guide, I have myself, for the different colors, I have brand 1, brand 2, brand 3, however many colors they have in their brand. And if it's Carla and Josephine, I actually have a Carla class and a Josephine class, or a font 1, font 2 class. So what I hear you saying is load those into that CSS editor. So if they have a heading that they suddenly want to be their green brand color, they choose the drop down, go green or brand 2 or whatever you call it in the style guide, and it applies just to that item, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And probably disabling some of the things in the editor as well, because honestly, we don't really want people changing the fonts. Like, that doesn't make any sense. They should just mark up the content the way it's supposed to work, or supposed to be, and then it's going to naturally follow the style sheet. But some things like colors, I can see some customers really kind of wanting to control that, and it'd be better for us to give them the palette that fits in with their brand, so someone just doesn't do like this electric green to draw emphasis to something if that's not part of the brand. And then I really think a really common thing we get is, oh, I want to right align the image and have the text wrap around it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they'd have to come to us for that, or we'd have to build a web app or whatever. I mean, now they can just use the WYSIWYG editor and just apply the class. And I feel like that is a no-brainer. And I think we should probably have like a standard set of classes, like image left, image center, image right. I don't know, like Patty, you know better than I would, but there's got to be things that apply to all websites that we can easily put in there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you could probably whittle it down to about 20 to keep it simple and easy to document, but around the brand colors, around image alignment, much beyond that, I don't know that you really necessarily need.
Yeah.
Just, being able to apply specific fonts, specific colors, and then to align things, that's probably all you really need.
Yeah.
Steve says, what about page control? Could it be developed to remove the need to use the editor? I don't think in the context you're asking about, Steve.
Yeah, so I'll expand on that. So page control for us is really to tackle some more of the advanced things that I don't think grabbing some text or an image and just applying a class to is going to create that sort of desired look and functionality too. So the page control is typically around more kind of bigger structural kind of changes to the page, I would say. And I think it definitely removes the desire to have to do as much in the body because well, let me say it actually a different way. Page control is really great for pages where the body of the page isn't just this one container of space on the site because there's only one page body in Business Catalyst. But it's great to say, hey, I want to also edit the head something in the heading area and also in the side areas because we never ever want to have HTML code in the body of the page that is like the structure of how the layout of the overall page is put together. We just want it to be what kind of whatever formatting is inside this little area of whatever we determine is the page body that the client should have so control over the formatting, the code that goes there. Oh, good. So Stephen gave us a reference on a book for more of those funky names that we could be using in templates. So thank you again.
I'll pass that on to Kristen. Yeah, that was her humor. She's quite gracious and helps with loading content and such. So that's how she gets me back. Well, maybe we can, if there's no more WYSIWYG conversations, we can open it up to see if anybody has a different question they'd like us to have a go at providing an answer for. Yeah, Dan says IP nightly. You must be young because you have to add a 3 or a 4 to that for it to be me. Steve says, "Yep, but could you have a widget control of the page? Have a widget control of the page control items?"
Yeah. So I think what you're asking, Steve, is inside of the page body. If you want to insert, well, there's 2 ways you can think about this. If you wanted to insert certain functionality, like let's say full screen, big picture on the right, formatted content on the left with a burgundy background for whatever reason, right? And you can set that up as a separate web app, a component web app that is, let's say, I don't know, image, color, section or component or whatever. And then they fill out the contents there. They use the module toolbox on the right to say, hey, I want a single item of this web app, and then they just insert there, and then it will output in format exactly as they need. So that's one of the ways that we've tackled that, which is great. But then also, let's say with the Brain Injury Association of America, where if we know that at the bottom, for example, you might have one of those sections, as an option no matter what on every page. We can build that into page control so that they can just specify and pick that component web app right in that other web app, and then it will automatically get outputted below the body of the page.
I think he's hoping that maybe if I'm extrapolating, in the web app, there is the text multiline, and there's an editor available for that. And Steve, are you suggesting that that's maybe a better editor to have end users using? Is that the idea?
I actually think it's the same editor though, Dave. Is it not?
I don't think so.
It's Redactor. It might just be a reduced version of Redactor.
Just reminded, I'm going to replicate that site and then see what we get. So I'm just going to replicate that audio podcast site and see if the changes I made go with it or not.
Sounds good. Dave, you aren't sharing your screen anymore. Not that you have to, but.
Yeah, no, I did know that. It's because I'm shopping for guitars while I'm listening to you talk.
Oh, that's good.
I'm not actually, but.
You're just watching YouTube videos.
Yeah. I was kind of wasted too because Karen's not even in the room. Anytime I say anything about buying another guitar, I feel pain in my shoulder or my arm. Sometimes it feels like hands are wrapping around my neck.
It's the same way with me in board games, and it's frustrated me anytime my wife will get upset at me for buying a new board game, and it's not that often, and I'm like, it's like $49 or $59. You know how many other like more expensive hobbies I can have than buying board games? Like, you should be very thankful for this.
All right, so I can confirm that I replicated that site and it came back fully loaded, as it were. The changes that I'd made were not applied.
Okay, got it.
There's no fonts, there's no font sizes, there's no extra colors. All the tools are turned on. Not the ones I turned off are not turned off. So
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm trying to follow Steve Johnson. So like the page, about page you were mending, the element of it and its own page control web app.
So Dave, can you share your screen again and go back to the about page? Because I think I can answer Steve's question. And again, I don't think it relates to page control. I think it's more of just thinking about building out components as web apps. So go to the front end rather. There you go. So let's just say, scroll down. Scroll and stop right here. Stop right here. So let's just say that this layout right here with this the team in this bar and this style over the left, and then these images on the right. What you could do instead is you can create a web app, and I can call this like overlapping pictures right or something, and then I can create custom fields for them to put that granular content in. So I can say large image, small image, heading 1, heading 2, sub heading, or like overview, and then that could automatically populate. And you could do it based on page control, perhaps if you wanted this always to be before the output of the page body, and underneath it you define it as a page body, or it could just be use the module toolbox on the right hand side of the editor and insert this in to the page body where you'd like to output it. So I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, so
and that's what we do a lot of the time.
Yeah, so that would go into what we call a page module, and then one or two things you would have page modules below here, and you can select it as a data source, or you can go here and say insert list of web app items, find that page module and just insert it.
Right, and just to clarify, you wouldn't necessarily do that in the page control item. If you're using the module toolbox, you would do that on the actual page itself.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that for anyone watching the visual.
Yeah, sorry about that. This is not the right site because there's no page modules on this particular site. I could
Right.
change the one that has them, but um,
Well, Dave, I think we did it. We took a topic here that was requested, how to use the WYSIWYG editor. Sometimes it felt kind of like, hey, this is straightforward. What do we really need to talk about? But I'm happy. I think we touched across some topics that that maybe not everyone knew. We learned from each other on this episode, so that's fantastic. This was worthwhile for us. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. For those who are live and for those who watch on the recording, we appreciate it. And we'll see you guys again next week. So have a great day or night, everyone. Thanks.